What should you do when you run out of weaving wire mid-project? Or worse, it breaks? Ah! Well, don't panic. In this video, I'll show you how to add in new wire to complete your project, no matter what weave you're doing. I admit, I try to have as few wire ends in my project as possible, so I try to have enough wire to complete the project. But that isn't always possible. If the length needed would be too unmanageable, or if it snaps midway through your project. So what are the possible scenarios we might find ourselves in? In a weave where you have multiple wraps on one frame wire. At least 2, preferably 3 wraps on one frame wire for finishing off, and the same for adding in new wire. This is the best scenario, as it will be the most secure, but we don't always find ourselves in an ideal situation. We might have just 1 wrap on one frame wire, wrapping around 2 or more frame wires, or when attaching pieces together or anchoring embellishment ends. These aren't ideal places. The worst are basically anywhere the weave will easily come undone. If you find yourself in one of these scenarios, you might be best just to undo the wrapping up to the point where you have multiple wraps. As here. But if that's not possible, don't worry, I'll show you what else you can do. But first, let's have a look at that best case scenario, where you have multiple wraps on one frame wire. Here I have 5 wraps on one wire, then 2 wraps on both wires, and just a bit of wire left. So we want to finish this weaving wire at 2 wraps of the single frame wire. We'll take it down the centre to finish that second wrap, trim it, then use the flat nose pliers to make sure it's flush to the frame wire. We then want to add in our new piece of wire, leave a short tail, and take it exactly where we would have continued with the previous wire. So we were wrapping this way around the wires. We want 3 more wraps on that single frame wire. Then wrap both wires twice for this design. Then back to the single wraps. Once we've got a little way along and that new wire is secure, we can compress the weave, which is just pushing it together. Trim off that wire end. Push it flush to the frame with our flat nose pliers. And ideally we want it to meet where the old wire ended. And then we can happily continue the weave. Having those 2 to 3 wraps around one frame wire is the most secure way to finish and start your weaving. We could call it the 2 to 3 wraps rule. But what if we were in one of the other situations? Well, we have a few choices. Number 1, we could change the design. There's no rule to say you've got to continue the same weave throughout. So we could switch to a weave with multiple wraps on one wire. If you're going to do this, I'd suggest then continuing with that new weave for a while so it looks like it's meant to be. So the project changes direction from what you might have originally intended, but so what? This might just take you in a whole new, inspiring direction. Or option number 2, we could add in the new weaving wire nearby. So if we look at this piece, for example, let's say I managed to snap the wire around here, possibly as I'm trying to manoeuvre the weave around the frame to finish it off. I will carefully undo the weave. You need to be extra careful if the wire's snapped, because that's likely to be due to it being brittle from work hardening. Then I'd take the weaving wire around that nearby frame wire, 3 times if possible, and trim. I could then add in my new wire on that same frame wire, or another one nearby. Then take it through and continue my weave. The third option is to cheat. Now the 2 to 3 wraps rule is one I always try to stick to, so I'd only do this if there wasn't another option, and if it's in an area where I'm not expecting high wear on the piece. So this area isn't sticking out away and might catch on clothing or something and the wraps come undone. So here we have the 2-2 weave. where we have 3 frame wires, but only alternating wraps on 2 wires, no single wire wraps in sight. Here we're going to use the fact that the frame wires are sitting next to each other to hopefully save us, with a little manoeuvre we could call the half wrap shuffle. To finish this weaving wire, we'll take it over the 2 frame wires and to the back. But then instead of coming up between these wires to continue the weave, we'll bring it up between these 2 here. Then we want to bring in the new weaving wire and add that so the wire end is coming up between these same 2 frame wires, next to the old weaving wire end, but on the weaving side of it. So between that and the weaves we've just done. We'll scooch that up as far as we can, then continue the weave with the new wire, bringing it up between the top 2 frame wires and over to give us our second wrap, then up between the bottom 2 frame wires and over the top 2 frame wires to continue the weave. If you're unfamiliar with this particular weave and want to know more about it, check out my wraparound weave video. I'll link that in a card above. We'll weave just a little way along so that new wire is quite secure. Then carefully trim both of those wire ends as close to the frame wire as possible. But take care not to cut the weave. Then we can compress the weave, and that should cover where those ends are. So from the front, the weave looks continuous. And at the back, we have what looks like 2 wraps around 1 wire next to each other, where it should be over 2 frame wires as it is here. But those are actually only half wraps. So hopefully now you can finish the projects and add in the wire you need. Let me know in the comments below which of these methods you've used to add in wire, or if you've got a whole other way that I've not even mentioned. Don't forget to subscribe for more techniques and tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.